it makes you re-watch every ounce of that interview, knowing that he lied about that. And then that email says, "We'll play some more soon." What does that even mean? I mean, it sends shivers down my spine.
A single leaked email has shaken the palace to its core, exposing secrets, reopening old wounds, and allegedly pushing Sarah Ferguson to her breaking point. The message, tied to Prince Andrew's controversial past, has unleashed whispers of betrayal, hidden ties, and legal fallout that no royal statement can silence. Could this be the moment Sarah finally turns her back on the man she once defended so fiercely? Let's uncover the email that shattered royal calm and reignited the storm that never truly ended. It began with one message, an email thought lost under years of secrecy. Out of nowhere, it resurfaced. Reportedly dated 2011, it allegedly showed Prince Andrew reaching out to a Metropolitan Police officer asking for personal information about Virginia Giuffre, the young woman at the centre of the Epstein scandal. Her name had just gone public, and that infamous photo of Andrew with his arm around her had already shaken the monarchy. But what this email hinted at was even more alarming. A royal possibly trying to use police contacts to dig into his accuser's private life. When the message came to light this year, it didn't just reopen old wounds. It tore through the fragile peace between Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. For years, they'd shared an unconventional bond, living under the same roof at the Royal Lodge, presenting unity despite everything. But insiders say this leak broke that fragile trust. Even those closest to them whispered that Sarah looked shocked and betrayed, realizing the man she once believed she knew might have gone much further than she ever imagined. The tone and detail of the email allegedly revealed a side of Andrew Sarah struggled to defend. Reports claim it wasn't some harmless inquiry. It mentioned Jeffrey's date of birth and even a US Social Security number, suggesting a calculated move to discredit Virginia. The Metropolitan Police quickly confirmed they were reviewing the claims, and though Andrew denied any wrongdoing, the damage was done. The optics were brutal. It wasn't just another scandal. It looked like royal privilege gone too far, public outrage reignited, and tension behind palace walls reached a boiling point. Sarah, who had once stood by Andrew through every headline, was said to be furious and deeply hurt. Her name, and her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, had already been mentioned in old Epstein-related files, and the thought of being dragged back into that nightmare left her livid. For Sarah, it was no longer about reputation. It was personal. Sources say her reaction was instant and emotional, a mix of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. Andrew might have believed the worst had passed, but this email proved otherwise. The ghosts of 2011 were back, and this time Sarah wasn't standing quietly beside him. As the scandal grows, one question now echoes through royal circles. Has Sarah finally reached her limit, and could this be the start of a royal reckoning that no one saw coming? Cut through every royal hallway and newsroom, one question echoed: what would Sarah do next? When that leaked email hit the press, it wasn't just Prince Andrew's name in the headlines. It was Sarah Ferguson's silence that spoke louder than words. For a woman who had stood beside her ex-husband through years of scandal, her sudden disappearance from the spotlight said everything. Insiders whispered that the Duchess of York had finally snapped. She'd reached her breaking point and was reportedly seeking legal advice for an extraordinary move, dragging Prince Andrew to the Supreme Court. To outsiders, that sounded shocking. But to those inside royal circles, it made chilling sense. Sarah had spent decades piecing her life back together after the collapse of her marriage and endless tabloid ridicule. She rebuilt her image as an author and charity advocate, but whispers of her financial reliance on Andrew never stopped. This leaked email, hinting at Andrew's alleged involvement in unethical behaviour, was said to have crossed a line Sarah could no longer ignore. What allegedly pushed her over the edge was the implication that her name, and possibly their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, had been dragged into the mess. The leaked correspondence didn't just show Andrew's attempt to dig up private information on Virginia Giuffre, it also hinted at past links that could stain the entire family. One shocking report even suggested Sarah and the girls had once visited Epstein after his release, something she has vehemently denied. Still, the damage was done. The whispers had started, and the doubts were impossible to silence. Behind closed doors, Sarah was reportedly furious. Friends say she felt betrayed, that her loyalty to Andrew had only endangered her own reputation. The email leak wasn't just humiliating, it was professionally dangerous. Her career as a writer and public speaker could all suffer from being tied to a disgraced royal. Insiders say her legal advisors outlined options, from protecting her image to filing a formal claim if Andrew's conduct had caused reputational harm. Sources close to Sarah insist this rumoured legal threat wasn't about money, it was about standing her ground. After years of shielding Andrew, she was ready to draw the line. This was her way of saying she wouldn't protect him anymore, and at the heart of her anger, her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, had long struggled under their father's shadow. Seeing yet another scandal pull their names into headlines was reportedly the last straw. As word of Sarah's legal intentions spread, Buckingham Palace grew tense. Officials had worked tirelessly to contain Andrew's fallout, but a court battle led by Sarah herself, that could shatter the fragile calm. Whether it was a real lawsuit or a sharp warning, one thing was clear: Sarah Ferguson was done being silent. The woman once dubbed Fergie the Forgiving now seemed ready to become Fergie the Fearless. But to understand how everything fell apart, we have to go back, long before the scandals, the silence, and the leaked emails. This is where the fairy tale began, and where it all started to crack. From royal love to Cold War. Let's rewind. Long before the headlines turned harsh, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson were the picture of a modern royal romance. Childhood acquaintances turned sweethearts. Their story had all the makings of a fairy tale. Reintroduced by Princess Diana herself, sparks flew instantly. In 1986, the world watched as the dashing Duke of York married the vibrant, flame-haired Sarah in a grand ceremony that captivated Britain. With her humour and bold personality, Fergie brought warmth and energy into the often stiff Windsor family. For a while, they were the monarchy's golden couple, modern, charming, and madly in love. But behind palace walls, the cracks began to show. Andrew's demanding naval career kept him away for months at a time, leaving Sarah to face the ruthless glare of the royal spotlight alone. Her openness delighted the public, but unsettled the establishment. Her laughter was seen as too loud, her honesty too risky. Isolation set in, and with each deployment, the distance between them grew colder. By the early 1990s, the tension was impossible to hide. The tabloids were circling, waiting for her next move. And in 1992, they got it. Her world exploded overnight when photos surfaced of American financier John Bryan kissing her toes while she relaxed in France. The images went global, an instant scandal that sent shockwaves through the monarchy. The palace distanced itself, and Sarah was branded a disgrace. Within months, her marriage to Andrew collapsed under the weight of humiliation. Their separation in 1992 turned into a formal divorce by 1996. Yet, unlike most royal exes, Sarah and Andrew's story didn't end there. They shared a home at the Royal Lodge, raised their daughters together, and kept showing up side by side at royal events. Their closeness fueled endless rumours of reconciliation, and Sarah, ever loyal, continued to defend Andrew publicly, calling him her best friend. But even loyalty has its limits. Insiders say Sarah grew tired of standing by Andrew while he gave little in return. Each new controversy, financial troubles, shady associations, and his connection to Jeffrey Epstein dragged her name right back into the mud she'd fought to escape. Behind her calm smile, resentment brewed. Friends describe Sarah as fiery, loving, but no fool. She wasn't going to let herself be taken for granted forever. The resurfacing of that 2011 email, linking Andrew to alleged attempts to dig up information on Virginia Giuffre, may have reignited buried emotions. Not just anger over his choices, but exhaustion from years of carrying his baggage. What began as a storybook romance has hardened into a cold, uneasy truce. A bond kept alive by history, but cracked by years of silence. Behind the polite smiles lies frustration, heartbreak, and betrayal. If the rumours of Sarah's legal move are true, that quiet tension between them may finally erupt into open conflict. ending one of the royal family's most complicated love stories once and for all. The Epstein shadows have returned. Jeffrey Epstein's story has haunted the royal family for years, but for Prince Andrew, it was never just a passing controversy. It became the defining shadow of his public life. His friendship with Epstein, once described as unwise but not illegal, spiraled into a global scandal that no royal diplomacy could contain. Now, with the resurfacing of a 2011 email allegedly linking him to attempts to obtain personal information about Virginia Giuffre, that dark chapter has returned sharper, deeper, and far more personal. Andrew's Epstein connection wasn't new. Photographs of him walking with the convicted sex offender in New York's Central Park in 2010 had already sparked outrage. But this newly leaked email suggested his involvement in Giuffre's case may have been far more extensive than anyone realized. The message reportedly contained chillingly specific details, implying a coordinated effort to undermine her credibility. Critics called it a disturbing misuse of privilege, while some supporters cautioned that the email might be taken out of context. Whatever the truth, the reaction was explosive. The Metropolitan Police confirmed they were actively reviewing the claims, while lawmakers demanded transparency over Andrew's past dealings. Campaigners even urged Parliament to revisit century-old rules, shielding royals from scrutiny, arguing no title should place anyone above accountability. In a matter of days, suspicions resurfaced, bringing the focus not only to Andrew's judgment, but to those around him. And that's when Sarah Ferguson's name re-emerged in the narrative. Mail on Sunday published excerpts of a separate 2011 email allegedly sent by Epstein to his lawyer, claiming that Sarah had been the first to celebrate my release and referencing visits from the Duchess and her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Sarah has consistently denied any such encounters, and both she and her daughters reportedly have no recollection of visiting Epstein. A spokesperson insisted the claims were false. Still, speculation spread like wildfire, blending rumor and fact into an inescapable cloud of scandal. For Sarah, who spent years rebuilding her reputation, this resurgence was devastating. The leaked details risked painting her as complicit, or at least too close to a man now synonymous with exploitation and abuse. It became impossible to separate Andrew's personal choices from the people closest to him. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood reportedly turned frantic. Senior aides feared each new revelation about Epstein would reopen old wounds. The monarchy had worked tirelessly to contain the fallout, but with King Charles and Prince William already distancing themselves from Andrew, tensions reportedly ran high and fury simmered behind the palace walls. Every fresh headline about the Duke and Epstein chipped away at the monarchy's moral authority. What made this resurgence especially haunting was its timing. Just as the royal family sought to move forward under a new era of restraint and modernization, the Epstein shadows dragged them backward into secret scandals, uncomfortable questions, and renewed scrutiny over power and privilege. As the leaked email spread online, stirring outrage and curiosity alike, one question echoed louder than ever. Had Andrew truly severed ties with Epstein's world, or were those ghosts never laid to rest? So what was Buckingham Palace's reaction? When the email surfaced, the palace reportedly went into quiet but unmistakable crisis mode. For years, officials had been trying to manage the fallout from Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein, carefully controlling what reached the public. But this new leak threatened to undo all that painstaking work and reopen wounds that had barely begun to heal. Senior courtiers were said to be in a state of tense alert, operating under one urgent directive: contain, control, and bury the story before it could spiral into another international embarrassment. King Charles reportedly held a series of tense discussions with his advisors and with Prince William, who has long been among the most vocal in demanding accountability within the royal ranks. Insiders claim William was adamant. The scandal had the potential to ignite a fresh wave of public anger, and his uncle's actions had already tainted the monarchy once. It wasn't just about image anymore, it was about trust. The monarchy was still reeling from the loss of Queen Elizabeth II and navigating a modern world increasingly skeptical of inherited privilege. Any new scandal could strike at the fragile faith the public still held. Sources say the decision was as painful as it was necessary. Charles reportedly told Andrew that stepping back from royal duties was no longer optional. it was permanent. Shortly after, Prince Andrew relinquished his Duke of York title, along with all military honours and royal patronages. Even his Knight of the Garter, a title steeped in centuries of chivalric prestige, was stripped away. His style of His Royal Highness, once automatic at birth, was quietly placed in abeyance. One royal observer called it a symbolic exile dressed in polite language, but within palace circles the impact was far more striking. Behind the scenes, sources suggested this move was not purely Charles's decision. Reports indicate both the government and Prince William pushed the king to act swiftly, warning that if the monarchy didn't clean its own house, Parliament might intervene. Some even speculated that discussions had already begun about formally stripping Andrew of his dukedom, a process requiring an Act of Parliament. Buckingham Palace, however, publicly maintained its silence, leaving the message clear. Despite polished statements and careful wording, the fallout from Epstein remained a threat, and the palace knew the consequences of inaction. No official statement was issued beyond the initial announcement of Andrew's retreat from public life. Every media inquiry was met with the same cold refrain: no comment. Insiders described the mood inside the palace as grim but resolute. The objective was simple: starve the scandal of oxygen, protect the institution, and hope the story faded into history. Yet royal secrets rarely stay buried. Journalists kept uncovering new threads, lawmakers demanded transparency, and now Sarah Ferguson was reportedly exploring legal action. The palace's silence began to feel less like control and more like fear. King Charles may have believed he was drawing a line under the scandal, but from the outside, it looked more like a family bracing for the next revelation. Just when it seemed the palace might contain the storm, pressure mounted from Westminster. Could lawmakers finally force the monarchy's hand? As Andrew's scandal reignited, the ripples of outrage spread far beyond Buckingham Palace, straight into the corridors of Parliament. For decades, lawmakers had avoided wading into royal controversies, constrained by centuries-old rules shielding the private affairs of the monarchy. But the leaked email, renewed media frenzy, and perception that Andrew had evaded accountability pushed Parliament to a breaking point. The British public was angry, the press relentless, and lawmakers began speaking in unusually strong tones. No royal, not even a prince, should be above scrutiny. It began quietly, with Labour MP Rachel Maskell from York Central reviving her proposal to allow removal of titles, a bill first introduced in 2022 after the initial Epstein allegations. The legislation would create a legal pathway for Parliament, or the monarch, to strip royal titles in cases of public disgrace or misconduct. Maskell's renewed push came with sharper language, reflecting public frustration at repeated half measures. Every time this resurfaces, it re-traumatizes victims and erodes public trust, she said. The mechanisms must exist to remove titles when conduct no longer reflects the honour they represent. Other voices quickly joined the chorus. Ed Miliband called the leaked correspondence deeply concerning, emphasising that any hint of royal interference with police matters demanded serious review. Nadia Witham of Nottingham East went further, saying the monarchy should not hide behind voluntary renunciations or carefully worded statements. Even members of the House of Lords, usually cautious on royal matters, began pushing for clarity about what the palace knew and when. Labour peer George Falk publicly questioned why Parliament remained bound by archaic rules preventing formal investigation into royal behaviour. Accountability must extend to all, he argued. What began as scrutiny over Andrew's titles had become something bigger, a symbolic struggle over transparency itself. The royal family's exemption from freedom of information laws, the secrecy of royal wills, and the lack of independent oversight over finances suddenly seemed like relics of another age. For some MPs, Andrew's scandal wasn't just an isolated disgrace, it was proof of a deeper problem. An institution insulated from modern standards of accountability. Amid the controversy, Sarah Ferguson's rumoured legal move against Andrew took on new significance. What initially seemed personal suddenly became part of a broader reckoning, reflecting public frustration with privilege, secrecy, and silence. Her consultations with lawyers echoed Parliament's growing insistence that no one, even a royal, was above scrutiny. Buckingham Palace tried to contain the matter, but lawmakers pushed back relentlessly. Some MPs suggested reopening investigations into Andrew's conduct as a former trade envoy, questioning whether he had exploited his position for personal gain. Others called for a review of his continued residence at the Royal Lodge. Behind centuries of royal tradition, a historic confrontation quietly unfolded, one with the potential to reshape public perception and royal protocol. The more the palace remained silent, the louder Westminster became. It was an uncomfortable reminder for King Charles that his promise of a modern monarchy carried real consequences. Parliament was ready to hold the royal family to those expectations. What began as a scandal had evolved into a test of the limits of privilege, with Sarah Ferguson emerging as an unexpected catalyst for accountability. And as political pressure mounted, all eyes quietly turned back to the Royal Lodge, the former sanctuary of Andrew and Fergie. What truths remain hidden behind those walls? Keep watching to uncover them. The Royal Lodge, the fortress of silence. Behind the tall, wrought-iron gates of Windsor Great Park lies this sprawling, ivy-wrapped estate, once a symbol of royal privilege and peace. But in recent months, that peace has reportedly fractured. Once a shared sanctuary for Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, the 30-room mansion has become something closer to a gilded prison, a fortress where resentment, fear, and old loyalties collide. Andrew has lived there since the early 2000s under an ironclad lease agreement that even the monarchy struggles to challenge. After the Queen Mother passed away, he took the property with a promise of restoration, reportedly investing millions into repairs in exchange for symbolic rent. For years, it was his safe haven, a private world far removed from public scrutiny. After his fall from grace, it became a retreat in every sense of the word. But now the same estate that once protected him is rumoured to be at the centre of a growing storm. Sarah Ferguson's continued presence at Royal Lodge has always fascinated the public. Even after their 1996 divorce, she remained unusually close to Andrew, living under the same roof, raising their daughters, and describing their bond as an unbreakable friendship. Sources close to the Duchess, however, say the atmosphere has shifted dramatically since the leaked email reignited controversy, turning a former haven into a tense, fragile ground for old conflicts. The warmth that once defined their relationship has reportedly cooled into awkward civility. Friends say Sarah Ferguson's frustration has reached a breaking point. She has built a career as an author, charity advocate, and public figure, carefully distancing herself from past mistakes. Yet every fresh revelation about Andrew threatens to pull her back into the same old royal narrative. The Duchess, once her ex-husband's staunch defender, now reportedly spends her days weighing legal options, increasingly determined to draw a line between her life and his legacy. She feels trapped. One insider said, "Royal Lodge was supposed to be a refuge, but now it feels like a cage." Meanwhile, Andrew's isolation has deepened. Stripped of titles, royal duties, and much of his public dignity, he spends most of his time out of sight. Once surrounded by guests and ceremonial duties, the Duke now lives a quieter, more subdued routine. Long walks on the grounds, limited visitors, and a lingering sense of defiance. Insiders claim he's reluctant to leave the lodge, knowing it remains one of the few privileges untouched by scandal. Caught in the middle are their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, loyal to both parents, yet visibly weary of the constant scrutiny. They visit, they mediate, but they cannot bridge the widening rift between their mother's resolve and their father's denial. If Sarah's rumoured lawsuit proceeds, it could shatter the uneasy peace at Royal Lodge once and for all. Legal battles have a way of unearthing secrets, and for a man who has built his last refuge on silence, exposure could mean eviction, both literally and emotionally. The walls of Royal Lodge have kept many whispers hidden, but if Sarah truly decides to speak through the courts, even its centuries-old stone may not be enough to contain the truth. The tension inside Royal Lodge was only the beginning. What happened next would spill far beyond its walls. What began as quiet tensions soon erupted into public chaos as whispers of Sarah Ferguson's mounting frustration leaked into the press. Investigative journalists and online sleuths began connecting the dots the palace had desperately wanted erased. What they uncovered sent shockwaves across both media and royal circles. It all started with a single email, but the trail didn't end there. Within weeks, digital archives and old Epstein case files resurfaced across online forums. Activists, journalists, and independent researchers pieced together timelines linking Andrew's 2011 message to a series of other private communications, some involving royal aides, others referencing meetings that had never been publicly acknowledged. The deeper investigators dug, the more questions arose about who else might have known and who could have helped. Some documents hinted at overlapping dates, moments when Sarah and their daughters were reportedly in New York, coinciding with visits linked to Epstein's inner circle. While none of the files proved direct wrongdoing, the coincidences were damning enough to raise eyebrows. For Sarah, that speculation was intolerable. Sources close to the Duchess claim she stumbled across information suggesting her family's names appeared more often in these digital trails than she ever realized. If true, it would explain her sudden fury and determination to take legal action. What may have begun as Andrew's private crisis had, in her eyes, become a family betrayal, one that could drag Beatrice and Eugenie into scandal. They had spent years trying to outrun the fallout. As new reports spread and screenshots went viral, the walls of Royal Lodge, the quiet buffer between Sarah and the world, seemed to dissolve overnight. The secret was out, and the fallout was only beginning. Buckingham Palace reportedly went into panic mode. Every corridor buzzed with urgency as King Charles's advisors scrambled to assess the damage and, more importantly, prevent further leaks. Even the usually composed palace press office was reportedly overwhelmed by late-night strategy meetings and frantic calls. The priority was clear: protect the monarchy's image at all costs. Prince William, the pragmatist, was reportedly growing impatient. Insiders claim he pushed for total transparency, or as close to it as royal protocol would allow. No more quiet cover-ups. He allegedly told senior staff that silence would only make matters worse. His position highlighted a generational divide within the family. The old guard favoured discretion, while younger royals recognised the modern demand for accountability. Public sympathy was waning, and another scandal could erode trust in the monarchy entirely. With Sarah Ferguson allegedly preparing legal action and the media circling for more leaks, King Charles faced an impossible choice: defend his brother or allow him to fall completely. Meanwhile, Sarah's next move remained unpredictable. Would she file in court, forcing the palace into unprecedented scrutiny, or would a quiet settlement be arranged behind the scenes? For now, no one knew. But one thing was certain: the walls of royal secrecy were cracking, and whatever came next could shake the monarchy to its core. What happens if Sarah truly takes Andrew to court? Could royal immunity finally crack? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more royal revelations.